Thank you for undertaking training to make warm transfers to the National Gambling Helpline. In addition to watching this video, please refer to the accompanying Helpline Transfers Guide. The National Gambling Helpline is run by the charity GamCare. Our mission is to reduce harm from gambling in the UK by offering free advice, support and treatment to anyone who needs it. The helpline operates 24/7, 365 days of the year, so whenever someone wants to reach out and talk about how gambling is affecting them, an advisor is there to listen. Each time someone connects with the National Gambling Helpline is potentially life-changing, so we want to thank you for playing such an important part in that person's journey. After watching this video, you will be able to understand some essential concepts of harmful gambling, give a customer key information about the National Gambling Helpline, make a smooth, warm transfer to a Helpline Adviser, know when a transfer is not appropriate, for instance in emergency life-threatening situations where you should call 999. The National Gambling Helpline Advisers give confidential and free information, advice and support to anyone affected by gambling harm in England, Scotland and Wales. Advisors can be reached through the National Gambling Helpline or through our live chat on the GamCare website and also through WhatsApp. Advisors are trained to explore the topic of gambling with callers and can give advice about strategies to reduce gambling or even stop altogether, but only if that's something the person wants to do. So why do people contact the National Gambling Helpline?
Hi, my name's Dan and I've been working on the National Gambling Helpline for just over 2 years. On the helpline, we experience a vast range of calls from many different people looking to stop gambling, control their gambling, or look at their relationship with gambling in greater detail. The support we offer ranges from self-exclusion advice, debt and money advice, blocking software, and also one-to-one support and peer support as well. We also receive a lot of calls from friends, family, relatives, children, and people concerned about someone else's gambling. And support groups and one-to-one sessions are available to anybody experiencing gambling-related harm. For anyone making a transfer, it is really important to stress to customers what GamCare and the National Gambling Helpline can offer customers and what we can't. Helpline transfers are really valuable for capitalising on a customer's decision for change.
So, how could gambling become harmful for some of your customers? It's important to remember that for many people, gambling is a harmless leisure activity. However, for some, gambling can cause significant harm. At GamCare, we think of gambling behaviour existing on a continuum, from in-control gambling to gambling that is causing severe harm. A person's position on the continuum of gambling harm is not static, and it's not a one-way journey. Someone who is consistently in control of their time and money spent gambling may occasionally have a day when they spend more than they planned and then return to the social gambling end again. There are lots of reasons someone might increase the time or money they spend gambling. However, when someone starts to feel that gambling is negatively impacting their life, that should be a concern. For example, if they cannot control the urge to gamble, are preoccupied with thoughts of gambling, using gambling to win back money that they've lost, are in debt, losing important relationships, or experiencing thoughts of suicide, they might want to change their relationship with gambling, and these changes are more likely to be achieved with support. This is not an exhaustive list. You can refer to our guide for more information about spotting the signs of gambling harm. It's not just gamblers who need support, it's also those around them. Help is available for family and friends, and we encourage you to signpost anyone affected by gambling to the National Gambling Helpline. When you are affected by someone else's gambling, it can have a significant impact on your life. A person's gambling can cause financial harm to the affected other by borrowing or stealing money, or by using money from a shared account. Often the distress caused is not solely financial, and affected others find that emotional and personal complications can arise from excessive gambling. GamCare offers a service to transfer calls from customers wishing to receive support for harmful gambling directly into the National Gambling Helpline. It's important to listen for signs that your customer would like to change their relationship with gambling, as that's where our helpline advisors can support them. Appropriate, safe transfers to the National Gambling Helpline benefit us all. First and foremost, customers, as they can seize the opportunity to make a change without the need to hang up, find our number and redial. Secondly, you and your colleagues, as you know that customers are receiving the support they need. And finally, GamCare, as we receive more referrals and reach more people looking for help. The next section of the video covers how to make a transfer. First, we are going to look at what you need to do before you start the process. When you're speaking to a customer, they might tell you that they are experiencing harms from gambling, or you might get that impression from the current conversation or prior interactions. You first need to assess whether a transfer to the National Gambling Helpline is appropriate. To do this, consider, is there any immediate risk to this person or those around them? If the answer is yes, they should not be transferred. If the answer is no, ask yourself, does this person want advice or support for gambling harm? If you've checked and confirmed with the customer that they do want to speak to a National Gambling Helpline advisor, you'll begin the warm transfer process. There are 4 C's to cover before you make a transfer: confidentiality, charges, consent, callback. You should inform the customer that the call to the National Gambling Helpline is confidential, non-judgmental, and that if they wish to remain anonymous, they can. You should also check with your customer which information you can share with the Helpline Adviser when transferring the call, and whether there is anything they don't want you to disclose. In addition to GamCare's confidentiality requirements of the warm transfer, it's important for your customer to be aware of how their data is collected and used by your organisation. For confidentiality purposes, you must hang up once the call has been successfully transferred. The National Gambling Helpline is free to call. However, a customer being transferred to the helpline will continue to be subject to any charges applicable to the phone number they originally called. This should be made clear to the customer, as they may prefer to hang up and redial the 0808 National Gambling Helpline number. Getting explicit consent from a customer to be transferred is crucial. You should be confident that the customer knows why they're being transferred, the type of support they can expect, and the sort of information that you will pass to the advisor. You must always store a record of the consent given. If the National Gambling Helpline is experiencing a large volume of calls, it might not be possible for an advisor to answer your call. In this situation, you will be able to leave a voicemail and request that a helpline advisor call your customer back. You must have consent from your customer to leave a voicemail, and they must also give consent for you to share their contact details. You also need to explain to your customer that the advisor who calls them back will say that they are calling from the National Gambling Helpline at the start of the call. If the customer does not want to be called back, you can suggest they hang up the call and dial the 0808 number. When you've covered the 4 C's, confidentiality, charges, consent and callback, you're ready to make your transfer. Usually your organisation will have a unique transfer number which you can dial to take you to the National Gambling Helpline. It is important that you do not give out your organisation's unique transfer number to customers. You will bypass the recorded messages and go straight into the call handling system. Dan explains what happens next.
When your customer's consented to the transfer and you've dialed the unique transfer number, you'll be connected to the helpline and we'll answer the call as quickly as we can. Upon answering a call and speaking to an advisor, we'd like to know your name, the organisation you're calling from, and the details about the customer. The more information we have, the better we can support them. If they do want to remain anonymous, that is absolutely fine. It is important for us to know the relevant action you have taken with your customer and the reason for the call. This could be something like the implementation of safer gambling tools or an account closure.
So why might you make a warm transfer to the National Gambling Helpline? There are lots of reasons to make a warm transfer for a customer. You might have noticed in your conversation with your customer some signs of moderate or severe gambling harm. Perhaps a customer has asked to speak to someone who can help with their gambling. Maybe the person you're speaking to is trying to take a break from gambling, but has told you they are finding it difficult and they would like support. Or it could be that the customer is experiencing harms because of the gambling of a loved one and wants to speak to someone about how they're feeling. The important thing to remember is that the decision about making a warm transfer is up to the customer. Even if you think it might be beneficial for them, you should only transfer someone to the National Gambling Helpline with their permission. Sometimes it's not possible for you to stay on hold, waiting for an advisor from the National Gambling Helpline to pick up. While a warm transfer is the optimal experience, a cold transfer, where the customer is left to introduce themselves and explain their situation to an advisor, is fine, but only if the customer is aware that you are dropping off the call and the customer appears to be in a low-risk situation. In addition to the many reasons you would make a transfer, it's important to know when you can't. Not every call about gambling is appropriate to transfer to the National Gambling Helpline. Occasionally we get non-target calls. These are calls about problems or questions our advisors can't help with, including customers wanting to complain about a gambling company, customers who are not wanting to change their level of gambling, customers hoping to close their gambling account or take money out of their account. It's important to minimise the number of non-target calls as they impact our ability to speak to people wanting our help. Your aim is to transfer only target calls. These are calls from gamblers or their loved ones looking for advice and support. Essentially, callers we can help. When thinking about calls not to transfer, it's important to note that the National Gambling Helpline is not a crisis helpline. When a customer is calling at crisis point and is at risk of immediate harm, or others around them are, it will not be appropriate to transfer them to the helpline. Instead, you should prioritise their safety, follow your organisation's safeguarding policy and seek support and advice from managers and the emergency services when appropriate. Before we summarise the training today, Dan will tell you more about the Onward support services we can refer callers into. To summarise, though gambling is for many people a harmless activity, it can cause significant harm to gamblers and those around them. Before transferring calls to the National Gambling Helpline, there are key questions to ask about the safety of the customer and their expectations about the transfer. There are 4 C's to cover before making a transfer: confidentiality, charges, consent and callback. Helpline advisors need to be given a few key pieces of information when you call: your name and organisation, details about your customer, contextual information like the reason the customer called you up, safeguarding concerns. There are lots of reasons to make a warm transfer for a customer. You might have noticed in your conversation with your customer some signs of moderate or severe gambling harm. Perhaps a customer has asked to speak to someone about their gambling. Maybe they are trying to take a break from gambling, but has told you they are finding it difficult and they would like support. It could be that the customer is experiencing harms because of the gambling of a loved one and wants to speak to someone about how they're feeling. A cold transfer is better than no transfer at all, but a warm introduction offers the best overall experience. For more information about the National Gambling Helpline and to see examples of transfer best practice, please refer to the Transfers Guide or visit gamcare.org.uk.